What is going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to talk to you about SoFi. I want to go over some of the data points, break it down on what really moved it, and go over everything else that you need to know. But first, make sure to hit that thumbs up. And with that, let's get right to it. So during the pre-market, things looked very doom and gloomish. Of course, first thing we had that little bit of a sell-off. It did recover back and forth. Market just didn't really know how to interpret everything. And there's been a lot of fears popping up over the last 24, 48 hours. But you can kind of see that the dip did get bought up. And so one thing or a couple of things that did come out during this time frame was this right here. So unofficial jobs report. And because of the whole shutdown, we haven't really had that much in labor linked data points. And so this did signal that ultimately in October that non-farm payrolls did drop by roughly around 9,000 to a grand total of 159. So not really much change since the last report that we did have, which was in August. So it was kind of stagnant. Market kind of took that as a positive. So a lot of stocks did move up because of this. Aside from that, though, we also did get this very close to the end of the day, and it did signal that the US Senate Democrats on Friday scaled back their demands to end the 38-day government shutdown. So still kind of stuck in limbo, no definitive agreement just yet, but the fact that they did scale back everything except for just their 1-year health subsidy extension, that it's fair to assume that it is going to be passed. So the market saw that as a very, very good positive. We also did get some good data first thing, mind you, and this kind of helped the market a little bit, but Michigan consumer sentiment came in at 50.3, forecast of 53. So the key kind of inflationary data point. So today started as very doom and gloomish, but turned out to be very, very positive. And shorts, they somehow did increase 121,000 shares, 8.36% of the free float is being shorted, works out to be 99 million shares overall being shorted. Looking at the options, we had 74 million in calls, 26 in puts, and then 45% of all the options being done were bullish in nature. I kind of looked at SoFi midway throughout the day, on which at that time, 56% of all the options were bearish. So clearly, second half of the trading day, you had just FOMO, a lot of optimism. And so people, as I've mentioned in the past, when kind of times look rough, there's a lot of blood in the market, doesn't hurt to, and especially if you believe in the company, to buy a long call. You can make some pretty good money that way. So a lot of clearly institutions and retail did that. Aside from that, though, from a bull standpoint, you see a consensus for it to recover to now that $28.50 to even $30 going into next week. Then the bears are anticipating for it to be kind of still sub 27, with it closing exactly at 28.23. That does mean that the $28 strike prices and below are considered in the money. So quickly looking here, you have 6,000 at the 28, 2,000 at the 27.50, 2,000 at the 27. So kind of chump change. So meaning you're not going to see any bump up going into next week, regrettably, but it is what it is. It would have been a lot better if SoFi closed close to, let's say, that $30 range. But again, that's kind of the downside of doing options. Sometimes is very speculative in nature and all the other fun jazz. But on the secondary market, you did have a lot of big money. And if you kind of just pause the video, look at a lot of the timestamps, you see right here, kind of big pockets of selling first thing. So that's one attributing factor why SoFi did go down first thing. And aside from that, though, you had a lot of big money buying the dip. So 45.4, 22.8, 5.6, 3.4, and so forth. And I think generally we kind of knew that there was going to be a quick dip, but I even posted this on my Patreon saying that we technically, or I expect a dip early on, followed by a market recovery. So I think just the writing was on the wall that it was going to occur, because if you kind of as well think about it, over the last 48 hours, yes, there's been a lot of fears, nothing really concrete though. And these fears have been kind of lingering for like 2-3 weeks now. So the fact that Palantir's earnings really kickstarted all this fear, arguably, I kind of feel like it was unjust. So I think just the market was going to have some sort of realization in the second half of the day. And plus a lot of the data points that came out, perfect timing. But aside from that, these are some of the transactions that did occur on the Darkpool. So big one for today was 7.05, 2.8, 2.6. So it goes to show that a lot of institutions were really trading it. Hedge funds and shorts not so much. And this is why we didn't really see any 20, 100 or so forth $1 million transactions. So the high one for today was 7.05 versus yesterday. I think we had, what was that, 100? No, yesterday we had a bunch of 11s. On the 5th, they had a 25.2 million. So definitely big money's been paying attention to SoFi. So that's kind of a good thing. One thing I did forget to bring up though, I believe 25.66 the low, 28.24 the high, and then a lot of volume. So 77 million shares being traded. So one good thing about SoFi is that it does and has been continuing to get a lot of institutional attention, whereas a lot of stocks, yes, they did recover, but most of that was linked to algorithmic trading, which is rather hollow. I don't like that. In SoFi's case, honestly, it's kind of weird because SoFi seems to be getting a lot of attention, and even comparing SoFi to a lot of other fintechs, SoFi outperformed all of them today. And so even Webull, they kind of just have been sucking all around. But even Robinhood, yes, it recovered, but SoFi on like a larger scale. So kind of signals that big money really does see a lot more upside with SoFi. But nonetheless, with it at 28.21, it did close right below this S1, so that's going to be something to watch for going into next week. So 28.69. And one thing that I kind of brought up in my video yesterday as a little bit more of a red flag was that it did actually break below that 50-day moving average. And historically speaking, that usually does result in like a 20% at least push lower. But luckily enough, today, how everything turned out, it was able to close above that 50-day moving average. So signaling that we might have a nice V-shaped recovery. At the same time, if we do get some further clarity over the weekend on exactly if we have a deal or whatever else, that might, again, intensify the FOMO in the broader market, really pushing SoFi back into kind of above that 10-day moving average at the very least. There really hasn't been that much in articles associated to SoFi, no news, no SEC filings today, so it was just largely piggybacking off the broader market. No new analyst ratings, so last one did come out on the 3rd, so it's been a good couple days since we've had any. But nonetheless, one thing to take note of though is stochastic RSI is very oversold because of pretty much all the crap SoFi has gone through the last couple trading days. So going into next week, things are looking very good to see even more of just a technical recovery, which I know it sounds weird to say that because 32.56 was the recent high, and even though it wasn't that crazy of a sell-off, it's still, we could be seeing a very nice technical breakout. So stay tuned for my video over the weekend where I go over some expectations of what to expect, where SoFi might be going, and everything else. One final thing, pop over to my Patreon if you're looking for some solid buy signals on stocks, options, crypto. I put out daily day trades, numerous swing trades, worthwhile to pop over there and check that out. With all that said, appreciate all of you watching.